Hey guys, welcome to another story time. I hope you guys have had a wonderful week this week and you guys are ready to jump on in and read. I promised that this was going to be an interesting chapter section and it's one of my favorites. So I'm just going to jump right on in because I cannot wait. We'll talk after it's done. Let's do this. We are on chapter 14. Hours passed in laughter and bad puns as they fought their way to the castle beyond the Goblin City, slayed a dragon, and rescued the prince. Even Matt, who'd initially seemed most concerned about having a vampire join their campaign, lightened up as if he'd forgotten who he was sitting next to. The evening moved at such a frenzied pace that it was nearly sunrise by the time they were ready to call it a night. "You gonna make it to your coffin before bursting into flames?" Sage walked Zack outside. Excuse me. Allergies. It's going to be bad this week. Sage walked Zack outside. Silvery light had begun to peek through the veil of starlight. "Don't you worry about me. I've been around for a long time." He glanced quickly towards the horizon. "Never failed to find a safe place to sleep." "Well, you better hurry. Sun comes up fast." She moved to give him a hug, but then pulled back suddenly. Somewhere during the hours of gameplay, her guard had dropped. But they weren't those kind of friends. Not yet. Zack's eyes narrowed. He stood, scrutinizing her for a moment before finding his voice. "Honestly, I'm more concerned about you. I meant what I said earlier. If you're dealing with a Djinn..." His breath hitched in his chest. He coughed to cover his sudden hesitation, but Sage saw through the ruse. His eyes were far too blue to be mistaken for anything but otherworldly, and they met hers. There was something else buried deep within those icy depths that she hadn't seen before, but Sage didn't have the words to match the feelings that they evoked. "Djinn are the worst tricksters. And you are so..." Zack cut himself off with another sigh. He shifted on his feet and fiddled with his hands as if an internal war had chosen body parts to represent sides. Finally, with a growl of frustration, he spoke. "Please, just give the assignment to someone with more experience." Sage had nearly forgotten their conversation from earlier. Of course he had to go and ruin her good mood by bringing it up, not only reminding her about her work and pointing out her inexperience with his fearful plea. "A.S.S.E.T wouldn't assign me something they didn't feel I could handle." She puffed her chest out proudly. "And I've got good people in my corner." "Gray," he scoffed. "Do you remember how he introduced us?" Zack's tone had took on an oddly jealous edge. "His methods are unconventional, I'll give you that. But he gets results." Sage defended, feeling strangely wrong having to do so with Zack. "And Devon," she added. "He's always got my back." Zack looked around, making a show of searching their surroundings. "Neither of them are here tonight." He met her eyes again, daring her to deny the truth. His overprotectiveness was fast becoming annoying. Sage crossed her arms, staring back defiantly. "Why would they be? I'm off duty." "You're a Terra and a brand new A.S.S.E.T agent." He pointed straight down at her wrist. "You don't have time off." "You're not going to start on me with the go live in the barracks crap again, are you?" Sage took a step back, inching closer to her door, ready to make an escape if he tried to pull rank. "I've already heard this from the team, so you're desperate, the team you're so desperate to discredit." Zack had gone from zero to asshole with breakneck speed, but what bothered her more than his sudden misogyny was the shift in his posture. His muscles had tightened, his eyes were dilating, growing darker the longer they stared at her. Something had changed in him, and it was no longer clear what his intentions were. Man, I can read today, I swear. Zack's focus on her had become more than friendly, and his kind were known to lust after one thing above all: blood. "I would never tell you where to live." Zack launched himself forward with impossible speed, closing the gap between them before she could register the movement. His hand found her mouth, preventing her shocked gasp from escaping. Wow, I'm really having trouble reading today. I am so tongue-tied. So for those of you counting, have we hit 100 yet? All right, let's start it again. His hand found her mouth, preventing her shocked gasp from escaping. Zack stood nose to nose with her, so close she could feel the heat from his breath. Sweet girl, so naive to the dangers around you, innocent to the true nature of the world. His eyes grew darker, choking out all the color that gave them their unnatural beauty. All predator, ready to strike, he pinned her against the apartment door. Words lose their meaning with creatures like you. Headstrong, impulsive. The only thing you learn from is failure. The timbre of his voice deepened. His breathing slowed to a determined rhythm of raw desire. A tempting target, gift-wrapped for anyone willing to snatch you up. Zack let his hand fall from her mouth, but kept her pinned to the door with his body. Close as he was, his eyes weren't the only thing that Sage was focusing on. Those teeth. Sharp as daggers, she'd experienced the sting of a vampire's fangs once before, and that sudden remembrance made her scars itch. You're acting like a real jerk now, Zack. I know. He flashed those teeth again at her. And I don't think I can't hear how excited it makes you. Admit it, you're more than a little turned on right now. A knot formed in her throat. She swallowed hard, forcing it down so she could speak. Excited? It's not the word I would have chosen. Her voice cracked, betraying the panic that she was so desperate to hide. This wasn't the Zack she knew. He'd morphed into something dangerous, and she couldn't tell how real his threat was. Pick a word then, he taunted. Make it a good one. Stop! She pushed against him, but found his body an immovable wall. You're creeping me out. Fear, is it? Zack laughed coldly. Good. You should be afraid. Most don't survive being bitten. His breath blew against her skin, surprisingly warm, but the effect chilled her blood. The last one who bit me didn't survive. She attempted again to mask the tremble of her voice with the threat. Gray, your great protector, was there to save the day. But where's he now? Zack's words struck her like a slap to the face, but before she could respond, he bent his head to the crook of her neck. She cringed, expecting pain that didn't come. I could have you right now. Zack's lips hovered, tantalizingly close to her throbbing pulse. He inhaled slowly, as if savoring every note of her scent. But the real question is, could you? He lifted his head and met her eyes once more. Would you try and stop me? Zack's words implied so much more than a simple threat. She couldn't let that happen, but being pinned against the door severely limited her options. She scrambled for the right words to stall long enough to find a way out. I thought terrors were an acquired taste. She reached down towards her pocket. Before she could dig for the knife she kept folded there, his knee came up, forcing her legs apart, and he growled possessively in her ear. One taste of you was such a sweet tease. I need more. More than just a bad boy. Zack was pure sin wrapped in a taut body, with maybe centuries of experience. A very small part of her welcomed the excitement, but self-preservation trumped desire. Get used to disappointment. He nuzzled her neck and pecked a kiss at her racing pulse. Don't pretend you aren't thinking about it. I can smell your arousal. I can see the way you look at me. Her legs nearly went out from under her. You're going to get yourself killed. I would be disappointed if someone else got to the prize before me. Zack pulled back long enough to meet her eyes again. Rather than fall victim to the wrong sort, he whispered, let me have you. If he had wanted to, he could have ended her right there. She hadn't even put up a fight. Fear had shifted to embarrassment. He'd done this on purpose. He was screwing with her. That had to be it. Showing off his speed and going full demon, forcing her to look at him in the light to make her understand that predators were all around. Everyone had to remind her of how new she was to this world. Adrenaline kicked in, giving Sage strength enough to shove Zack away. When did you get so protective? You wound me. He feigned pain, clutching at his chest where she just struck him. Have I not been honest with you from the start? You know what I am. You know who I am. Why would you expect anything less of me? Always deflecting with a joke, he was the worst kind of playboy. Easy to talk to and gregarious, while underneath it all harboring deadly ulterior motives. Stalking in the shadows and threatening to eat me, this isn't the Zack I considered a friend. Sage struggled to maintain her flippant tone. The worst thing that she could do was to let him sense how close she was to coming unglued. I am a vampire. No matter what you'd like to think, at the end of the night, I am what I am. He licked his fangs, purposely flicking the sharpest one with his tongue. But that doesn't mean that we can't both enjoy the fringe benefits. Ugh, vampires are such assholes. Her heart continued its drum roll within her chest. If it kept that pace, she'd pass out. That thought alone kept her from allowing it to happen. Falling unconscious around Zack right now, that was a recipe for disaster. You don't know the half of it. Zack chuckled with the same ease he'd had all night, as if nothing truly bothered him. Or perhaps this was the game. Sage narrowed her eyes, daring him with her most dangerous glare to move. Thankfully, he remained where he stood. So tonight was all about teaching me a lesson of the nature of your beast, then? Oh no, I've been dying for an RPG group to form, but none of my people are really into that sort of thing. He laughed and shrugged and sent his eyes skyward once more, perhaps gauging how much time he had or trying to avoid Sage's hateful eyes. Call it a perk. Did Gray put you up to this? What did he pay you? It wouldn't have been the first time her partner had tried to scare her into submission. No one's paying me. Certainly not Gray. That got his attention. Zack's casual posture stiffened once more, shifting back to the predator. I'm genuinely concerned. You're still so new, so fresh, so innocent. He took a defiant step forward. Easy pickings. His eyes flooded with that insatiable hunger, zeroing in on their target. What chance do you stand here? If I weren't such a gentleman, what could you possibly do to stop me? Goosebumps spread across her skin. His words sent more than one red flag up, and every internal alarm she had went off at once. Fight or flight, with nowhere to run. Zack outmatched her in speed and strength. I'd find a way to rearrange your manhood before you could kill me. So if that's your plan, get ready for neutering. She stuffed her hand into the pocket, retrieving the knife that she kept for emergencies. Zack's eyes followed her hands. He smiled as he took a step towards her. You'll go down with a fight, but you'll still go down. That's the problem. Personal space, dude. Her hand flew up to stop him. Unless you really want to spend what remains of your immortal life, one nut lighter. You'll enjoy it more if you don't struggle. He made sure that she could see all of his teeth as he spoke. And so will I. Stop! Quit screwing with me. You know, for a minute there, I thought you were cool. I let you into my home. I almost trusted you, and then you pull this crap? I'm a vampire, not one of the good guys. His eyes made a slow and deliberate trail from her head downward. I have needs, and the beast demands to be sated. Sage flipped open her knife, making sure that he saw it, and Zack held his hands up in surrender. A seasoned terror would know that about my kind. We're beasts at our core, as are many other creatures, and you're going to... I know, I'm gonna get myself killed. We've already been through that part. You're a poor judge of people, and you don't understand the dark side of nature. It's a trick. The worst of us come in the best-looking packages. I judge people on their actions, not their... She scrambled for the right word. Packages. You haven't seen mine yet, Zack waggled his eyebrows. But you'll have to put the knife down first. See, that bullshit right there? You just killed any chance you had of ever being invited back here. A worthy sacrifice if it makes you see the true danger. Hunger had thickened in his voice, and you never know. You might enjoy learning about the beast within. Get out of here before I show you how beastly I can be, Sage growled at him. I don't have the energy to deal with your crazy right now. He took a step backwards. The sun had peeked over the horizon, and Zack's haughty expression faded as he saw for himself. His time was up. As you wish. Don't. Sage reached around behind her to locate the door handle, but kept her eyes on Zack. No way in hell was she letting him out of her sight until she was sure he had gone. You don't get to throw movie quotes at me like we're all good here. I meant what I said. You need protection. Zack turned and walked down the path from your own naivety. After a few steps, he picked up speed and in the blink of an eye disappeared from view. Her hands shook so badly she could hardly grip the handle. Afraid to turn around, Sage fumbled as she fought to catch her breath and slow her heart. The door opened behind her and she tumbled backwards. But Matt was there to catch her before she collided with the linoleum. Do you want to explain to me what that was all about? I think he was trying to hit on me, Sage cringed, suddenly feeling the need to take a scalding hot shower and burn away the shame. Zack had creeped her out in the past, but this time he'd gone more than a step too far. It was as if he'd become a whole other person. Dangerous, deadly, sexy. Nope. A beast, more creature than man. If he pulled that crap around Gray, he'd probably be staked out waiting for the sunrise. But he hadn't. Zack had done it here, without witnesses, targeting Sage when he knew she was alone and defenseless. What frightened her most was that a small part of her had enjoyed being the prey to his predator. No. Matt spoke the word like an order. Duh, he's a vampire, she replied. Her heart still refused to settle. She concentrated on taking slow breaths in and out, slow and deep, filling her lungs with fresh, cleansing air. You sure you're okay? Matt steadied her and returned to the kitchen, finishing up with the trash and tying the bag shut. Yeah, Zack just threw me off my game, she lied. He'd gotten under her skin. Her thoughts were all over the place. I mean, how would that even work, right? She hadn't meant to say that out loud, but the thought was there. Aside from being part beast, Zack was still very much a man. He'd caught her eye more than once. Strong, confident, sexy. She assumed all the parts were in working order. Experienced? No, Matt said again, as if he knew exactly where her mind had wandered. Look, I'm as open-minded as they come, but if you're even considering what I think you are, no. I need sleep. Heat rushed to her face, cheeks burning with embarrassment. How could she even think those thoughts? No, she had to get a grip. She couldn't let Zack or anyone screw with her like that. Sage wandered off into her room, struggling to think of anything other than Zack. Matt's voice again found her ears. No. Chapter 15. A few hours of broken sleep left Sage feeling more exhausted than before. Too many questions swam in her mind, and on top of the mystery still needing to be solved, she couldn't shake the confusion. I can read. Really, I can. The confusion left in the wake of Zack's odd behavior. Had he been making a serious pass at her, or was he just trying to scare her straight? Between multiple missing persons reports and deadly one-night stands, a workout session with Devin was a welcome distraction. But first, breakfast. She dressed for the day and pocketed and packed her duffel for training. A quick stop at the pub for their famous breakfast sandwich would fortify her for what I can read, I swear. I don't know why I'm tripping over my tongue so much today. Let's try this again. A quick stop at the pub for their famous breakfast sandwich would fortify her for whatever hell the day would bring. And coffee. Black, full of sugar. That was absolutely essential to keep her upright after the night she just had. Sage left the apartment as silently as she could to avoid waking her roommate. Outside, the day had brought a nearly cloudless sky and warm weather. But as she stepped out onto the front patio, Sage sensed something watching her. Who's there? She called out as the prickle of unseen eyes made the hair on the back of her neck stand on end. Her tired eyes failed to see, even with the blazing sunlight overhead. But she felt it, and she was relatively certain that Zack couldn't be waiting in the wings. He'd be dead to the world about now. If it wasn't the first troublemaker on her list, it had to be choice number 2. "Gray," she yelled, "quit screwing with me. I got no patience for games." "He doesn't treat you very well, does he?" A disembodied voice floated on the wind, masculine and familiar. Where had she heard it before? This, coming from the man hiding from my view? She circled slowly, trying to locate the voice's owner. "Perhaps you're seeing the situation backwards." "Show yourself," Sage demanded. "I've had less sleep than coffee, and my temper's on a hair trigger." "Do you promise not to hurt me?" he asked. "I don't make promises I can't keep." Sage summoned all her courage, trying to sound as menacing as she could. So many people underestimate how scary the Terra race can be. Luke came smiling out from the shadows. "I humbly lay myself at your mercy." He lowered his head, bowing with his arms held in surrender. "Are you guilty of something requiring mercy?" Sage asked, wondering if the missing people were about to be accounted for. Who acts like that? Bowing and scraping like some medieval peasant? "I've learned through experience that it's best to show appropriate respect for the law." He lifted his head and met her eyes, "especially when you're like me, cursed for the mistakes of my past." "So you're just sucking up then?" She rolled her eyes. "Yeah, I guess," he nodded. His silvery eyes glinted in the sunlight. "Your vampire friend told you all you need to know about my kind. Advanced level criminals, I believe he called the Djinn." She glared at him. "Eavesdropping on me then?" Voices carry so easily in the quiet of night. He shrugged and sent his eyes skyward to the balcony of his apartment. "What else carried up to your lair? Too early, way too early for this level of annoyance." He glanced downward at his arms. She'd seen this look before. She had made the same look when people noticed her birthmarks. "You didn't recognize me for what I was, even after I told you the first time we met." His smile faltered briefly. "I'm grateful for that. It's refreshing, to be honest, that someone didn't hate me right on sight. That's why I've worked so hard to befriend you." "I know what you are." Her eyes landed on him, on his arms, watching the tribal tattoo, flames licking his skin, mesmerizing in the way they moved like living beings. "I wondered if others can see your markings move like I can." "When the gods have branded you with their mark, it's done so that all will see." Luke's cheeks reddened slightly. "Punishment in my case, and insurance against future criminal acts." Zack had been adamant about her staying away from his kind. For a vampire to warn you off a magical being, that had to be serious. But like every other time she'd come into contact with Luke, Sage failed to register the threat. "If you want to be friends, then cut the eavesdropping." Sage hoped that she delivered the statement with authority and restarted her walk towards the parking lot. "I'm trying very hard to be a good boy. That's why I'm here." Luke's words stopped Sage in her tracks. "With information I think you might find helpful." "Speak." She turned to face him. "How willing are you to listen when you see it's to your benefit?" He laughed, but it failed to register his true humor. "And we're done here. Thanks for wasting my time." "Wait, don't go." Luke's expression hardened. "That was a bad joke. I'm sorry. I don't have time for bullshit. I have a job to do." "The vampire can't tell you what you need to know." He blurted out the words before Sage could walk away again. "And that partner of yours doesn't respect you." "Exactly how long have you been stalking me?" "No, not like that. Never." He backed up as if expecting for her to strike him. "I've seen you guys around the apartment complex. I hear things. You aren't exactly quiet about your comings and goings." Sage's cheeks ignited again at the thought of what happened a few hours earlier. Embarrassment of the highest caliber, knowing her neighbor had listened to the whole thing. Luke continued on. "It's my business to know things." "Why?" Her hand slipped into the hidden pocket of her mother's old leather jacket, and she fingered the dagger sheathed there, ready to pull it if he so much as took a step close to her. "It keeps me alive," he shrugged. "People in my position aren't welcome in polite society, least of all around the Terras." For good reason, it seems. Well, that's low, even for a young Terra like you. He delivered the words like a punch to the gut. The more you talk, the less I want to listen, she countered. We're getting on the wrong foot here. I'm coming with good intentions. I'm not your enemy. All evidence to the contrary. People are disappearing all around town. No trace, no connection, right? Sage looked away, not wanting to admit that he was right, and at the same time very interested in what I might say next. The connection is what you're not seeing, Luke suggested. You speak in riddles. Sorry, part of my curse. Being direct is not exactly in my wheelhouse. His voice took on a somber tone. Sage faced him again, seeing the same emotion echoed in his silvery eyes. Magic can't hide from your sight. He reached out with one hand and took a step forward. Unless you aren't looking at it. After her encounter with Zack the night before, Sage was not about to let another potentially dangerous guy near her. She gripped the dagger tightly and drew it enough for the Djinn to see the hilt. Stay right where you are. Ooh, I'm sorry. His outstretched hand flew up submissively. I only meant to show you. Use your words. He left his arm hanging in the air so she could get a good look at his tattoo. Unlike hers, which was static, Luke's markings swam through his skin like a living being. My curse is constantly working to bind me, a reminder that all magic comes at a price, even magic that can steal from others. He might as well have been speaking gibberish for all she understood. Those who've gone missing have not vanished. They exist somewhere. The threads of magic still link them. You just have to know where to look. So, is that one of my missing people swimming through your veins? She shot him the dirtiest of looks. Would I be so stupid as to show you my guilt? A muscle in his jaw twitched. No. Even if I had the power to absorb magic as my own, my curse prevents me from using it at will. So then what am I looking at? Sage groaned impatiently. What has the power to trap magic and bestow that power to someone else for use at will? He spoke the words very slowly so it would be clear. When you can answer that question, then you'll understand. So much for straight answers. Sage blew out a frustrated breath. Luke looked as if he wanted to say more, but as he opened his mouth, another voice called out for Sage. Damn it. All she wanted was a bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit and some coffee. But apparently the universe had other ideas. She turned to acknowledge her partner. Gray jogged up from the parking lot at a pace way too speedy for this early hour. Don't you ever answer your phone? He called out before he reached her. She hadn't even heard it ring. She reached into her purse, fishing for it, and looked back towards Luke to tell him goodbye, but he'd disappeared. Back to his magic lamp, I guess. She'd have to tell her partner about him. Good or bad, it felt like the right thing to do. I've called you 5 times, Gray barked at her. Why didn't you answer? What the hell have you been doing? Are you a teenage girl? Leave a message if I don't answer. She snarled back at him. Her patience had been tested one too many times this morning by surprise visitors and cryptic messages. She wasn't about to take this kind of crap from him, especially not on an empty stomach. Don't take that tone with me, newbie. He glowered down at her. What are you doing out here all alone? All alone in my apartment complex? Are you paranoid much? She threw the words back at him. If you're so worried about my safety, then why didn't you join me for game night? Children play games? Gray rolled his eyes. I'm neither a child nor do I wish to babysit them. Could have fooled me. Gray crossed his arms and stared down his nose at her. You still haven't answered my question. I was heading to the pub for breakfast. Sage gave him an impish smirk. Is that allowed? I mean, come on, it's broad daylight out here. You should know by now that means nothing. The hardness of his scowl softened into a disappointed frown. The look in his eyes said he'd been worried, but why was a question she needed a little more time to answer. Don't pretend to care about me or anything. I don't. But losing you would mean paperwork. Gray threw the words back at her with a nonchalant shrug. And I don't have time for that mess. She wasn't falling for that load of crap. Between you and Zack, there is no way I'm ever getting lost, so you can quit. Zack was here? Gray's tone shifted curiously. Yeah, you showed up for game night. Her mind replayed the way his teeth had blown against her neck. Zack had crossed the line in more ways than one, and a chill raced down her spine, despite the morning's warmth, and her arms erupted in goose pimples. She quickly folded her arms behind her back to hide them from his sight. Gray's eyes narrowed. Had he seen her reaction? He moved in closer than personal space allowed for, and took her chin in his hands before she could stop him. You invited him into your house? Did he stay the night? Is he still there? Curiosity morphed into a possessive level of inquisition as he turned her head to either side and inspected her for marks. Did he touch you? Did he bite you? Confused as she was about Zack's walk on the dark side, Sage had not yet had the requisite amount of coffee to process her partner's sudden rage. Her brain aired out, leaving her with one simple conclusion. Guys were stupid. Say something, Gray demanded. I'm fine. She backed away, swatting his hand like an annoying fly. Where is this coming from? Anger burned behind Gray's eyes, a sight that she'd never seen before. You just... He stumbled over his words. Please don't let him do that again. Something you want to tell me? Gray's nostrils flared with a heavy, audible breath. Never let a vampire into your house. I thought at least you would know that. Gray turned away from her, muscles trembling in his arms as he balled up his hands into fists that had no target. I let you out of my sight for 1 minute. Hey! I invited you to come hang out last night, remember? His jaw was clenched so tightly she could hear his teeth grinding. Moments of silent rage went by before he answered. Had I known you call a vampire in? Whoa, now, buddy. I didn't call Zack. He was already here waiting on my doorstep. And where the hell is this, she waved her hand at him, coming from? Protectiveness she could understand, but his actions and attitude smacked of jealousy. What the hell was he going to be jealous of? Do I need to spell it out for you? He growled. You want to keep your voice down? My neighbors don't need to hear you yelling at me. No doubt Luke was listening. She hadn't seen him leave, but his balcony was in plain view. Another problem guy she'd have to deal with at some point. But after the way Gray had reacted to Zack, no way in hell was she opening that can of worms just yet. Pain had begun to throb behind her eyes. If this continued, she'd have a full-blown migraine before lunch. He's a vampire, Sage. The anger came through loud and clear. You're the one always pushing for us to talk to Zack and use his information. When we need him, that's it. His face flushed, but the heat was there, and it was far from embarrassment. Full-blown rage bubbled within him. You think he's your friend? Do I need to remind you that he attacked you the first time you met him? How dare he throw that in her face? Sage nearly lost it. For all the protecting these men in her life claimed to be doing, they were all guilty of causing more than their share of danger. After a deep breath to tamp down her own mounting anger, she answered, You paid Zack to hurt me. Exactly! He attacked you because I gave him money. Gray's reply came without even the slightest hint of remorse. What if someone else wanted to pay him for round 2? Are you mental? What does it say about you that you willingly sent a killer after me? Sage glared him down, daring Gray to find some defensible reply. When he couldn't, she laid into him again. And you're no better than he is. At least Zack came clean and told me what you'd done. He doesn't do anything without benefit. Gray let out an exasperated sigh. Telling you my dirty little secret was in his best interest. It made you drop your guard. Now you trust him, and you're a fool if you do. He's not a friend. He's as much a friend as you are right now. The pain in her head was increasing with each moment they continued to argue. With no end in sight, she had officially entered the Twilight Zone, having to defend the horrible actions of one guy to another just as guilty of being a prick, both of whom she technically worked with and would have to see on a regular basis. Not exactly what she'd signed up for. Ava might not have a soft spot for her, but as soon as Sage had the chance, she was putting in the request for a new partner. Vampires are dangerous. Says the man who dated one. She threw the words in his face. Or did you forget I knew that dirty little secret of yours? I've got a few years on you, Sage, and you don't know the whole story. Listen to my wisdom and don't make the same mistake. A vampire is not to be trusted. Sage squeezed her eyes shut and took a deep breath before responding. Misogyny aside, she still had a job to do. Are we done with the lectures? Because I was heading to breakfast, and if you hold me up any longer, I might consider cannibalism. Gonna have to be fast food then. Gray's tone softened a little. We have another missing person, and this one might be the connection we were looking for. All right, so that was chapter 14 and 15. Let's see if anybody's out there in the comment section today. Oh, well, Joe, I'm glad you were excited to hear the chapters. I hope my flubbing did not ruin them for you. I know I was tripping a lot today. For some reason, I just can't connect the brain and mouth and get them working together. I don't know. Excuses, though, right? I'm here for 10 minutes, and I'm somehow 5 minutes late. What? I didn't start late. I started right on time. Interesting. Well, let's see. We're at 36 minutes. We've gone a little bit long today, so I'm not going to take up too much of your time. If you're watching on the live feed, this is Valentine's Day, so I am sure you have much more important things to do out there. And I hope for those of you who are out there that you have a wonderful day and that you take some time to do some self-care, that you have some dates lined up for you so you can go out and get your happy on. And I will be back next week to continue reading. We'll see what the other missing person is or other missing creature. All right, guys, I love you. Thank you so much for following along. Thank you so much for reading with me, and I will be back next week. See you later.